My daughter called me 3 days before Christmas and said, "Dad, the best gift you could give me this year is simply not coming." I said, "Of course," and hung up. I did not argue. I did not beg. I simply made 3 calls that morning that ensured she would remember that Christmas for the rest of her life. My daughter told me the best gift I could give her this Christmas was staying home. I told her that sounded reasonable. What I did not tell her was that I intended to make sure she remembered this particular Christmas for a very long time. My name is Walter Higgins. I am 66 years old, and I spent 38 years as a structural steel contractor here in Charlotte, North Carolina. I put up half the parking garages downtown that people complain about not finding spots in. These days, I mostly putter around my garage refinishing old tool chests, which my wife says is just a socially acceptable way of hoarding rust. Before I tell you what I did next, tell me where you are watching this from. I would love to know. Carol and I have been married 40 years. My best friend Sal Denning and I have known each other since 1993, back when we both worked the rail yard off Statesville Avenue before I moved into steel work. My daughter Kim is 38, married to a real estate agent named Bradley Ashworth for the last 6 years. Every Christmas since they got married, Kim hosted at their place in Ballantyne. Every Christmas, I brought the same bourbon pecan pie Carol made, and every Christmas, Bradley made a joke about my truck being older than his marriage. It usually was funny. That is the part that gets me now. Carol and I married when I was 26 and she was 24. We built our life slow and careful. A house in Steel Creek, 3 kids, and 1 piece of property I bought outright in 1987. 4 acres off Independence Boulevard that I never developed because I like knowing I own something free and clear. Land like that doesn't need explaining to people who understand what it means to owe nobody anything. About 6 weeks before Christmas, Bradley came by on AA with a folder of what he called storage unit paperwork, a liability release for a shared unit off South Boulevard where the family kept holiday decoration. He said his insurance company required a signature from everyone with access. I signed it at my own kitchen table without reading past the first paragraph because that is what you do when your son-in-law hands you a form and says it is routine. I did not think about that folder again until it mattered a great deal. Then in November, Kim mentioned Bradley's brokerage had lost a big commercial deal, a shopping center development out in Fort Mill where the anchor tenant backed out after Bradley's firm had already fronted $340,000 in earnest money against the commission that never landed. She said it lightly, the way you mention weather. I didn't ask more. You don't pry into your son-in-law's business the way you don't pry into your daughter's marriage, not unless you're invited to. 3 days before Christmas, Kim called me at 8:40 in the morning. I remember because I was refilling the bird feeder and Carol was doing the crossword at the kitchen table. "Dad," Kim said, "I need to ask you something and I need you not to make it a whole thing." "Okay," I said. "This year, I think the best gift you could give me is just not coming for Christmas. Bradley and I need some space. Some things are complicated right now and I can't do a full house this year." I said, "Of course, honey, whatever you need." I hung up. I did not argue. I did not ask questions. Carol looked up from her crossword and said, "That didn't sound good." I said, "It's fine. She just needs a quiet Christmas." But something sat wrong in my chest, the kind of wrong you get on a job site when a beam looks level but your gut says measure it anyway. So I measured it. I called my accountant, Ellen Prosser, who's handled my books for 11 years, mostly just to ask if she'd sent Kim and Bradley anything recent, some innocent question to pass the time. Ellen said, "Oh, are you doing the family paperwork thing at Kim's on the 24th? I saw it on the shared calendar Bradley set up. 10 a.m. A notary named Priya Chandrasekharan." I said, "What paperwork?" Ellen went quiet for a second. "Walt," she said, "I actually know that name. Priya does closings for 2 of my other commercial clients. She doesn't do residential family paperwork. She does deed transfers for shopping centers and office park. That's a strange notary to book for something routine at somebody's house on Christmas Eve." I sat down at my kitchen table. Carol asked what was wrong and I didn't answer right away. I thought about that storage unit folder from 6 weeks back. I called Denise Callahan, my attorney of 2 decades, and asked her, in a voice I didn't fully recognize, whether there was any power of attorney on file with my name on it. She called back 40 minutes later. "Walt," she said, "there is. Filed 3 weeks ago. General durable power of attorney. Financial authority included. Naming Bradley Ashworth as agent. Your signatures on it. Dated the same day as a storage unit release you apparently also signed." I hadn't signed a power of attorney. I'd signed a liability release for holiday decoration. Denise pulled both documents. The storage release was 1 page. The power of attorney was 3, and the notarization block at the bottom carried a different font size than the rest of the document, like it had been typed in afterward on the same signed page. I didn't say anything to Carol for about 4 minutes. I just sat there with my coffee going cold and the bird feeder still half full outside the window. I called Sal first. He picked up on the second ring, the way he always does. "Walt, what's going on?" I told him everything. He was quiet for a second, then said, Bradley's a real estate agent, Walt. He knows exactly how a power of attorney works. He knows exactly what altering a signed document after the fact means. This isn't confusion. This is a plan. I know, I replied without hesitation. There was a brief silence before Sal spoke again. You sound surprisingly calm, he said. Honestly, I like hearing you this way. I am calm, I answered. Getting upset isn't going to help us now. The only thing that matters is making the right phone calls. You're not doing this by yourself, Sal said firmly. I'm riding with you on December 24th, and don't even think about trying to talk me out of it. Denise didn't waste a single minute. As soon as she understood what had happened, she immediately prepared the paperwork needed to place a fraud alert against my Independence Boulevard property with the Mecklenburg County Register of Deeds. Since electronic filing wouldn't be processed before Christmas Eve, she instructed her paralegal to personally drive the signed revocation of the power of attorney straight to the registrar's office that same afternoon. She wasn't willing to risk a delay over paperwork. Then she made another phone call. This time she contacted the North Carolina Real Estate Commission, not to ask questions or discuss a hypothetical situation, but to report what appeared to be an active case involving a licensed real estate agent attempting to transfer property through a power of attorney that had allegedly been obtained through deception. According to the documents, the agent had appointed himself attorney-in-fact over his own father-in-law's property, even though the property owner had never knowingly authorized such authority or been present during the execution of the paperwork. By the end of the afternoon, everything had changed. What had started as suspicion was now backed by official legal action. Christmas Eve finally arrived. Sal climbed into my old pickup truck just after sunrise. That truck had been with me longer than Bradley had been married to Kim, and somehow driving it that morning reminded me that some things lasted because they had been built honestly. Carol stayed behind. She admitted she couldn't bear to watch whatever was about to happen, but before we left, she handed me a thermos filled with fresh coffee. It felt strangely normal, almost as if I were heading to another construction project instead of walking into my daughter's house to stop someone from stealing my property. The drive passed mostly in silence. Neither of us felt the need to fill the air with unnecessary conversation. When we pulled into Kim's driveway, I took one deep breath before walking to the front door. She answered almost immediately. The surprise on her face quickly turned into visible discomfort. Dad, she said softly, I thought we agreed everyone needed a little space. I know, I replied, but I also know there's supposed to be a notary arriving at 10 o'clock to witness paperwork transferring my property using a power of attorney I never knowingly signed. I think I deserve to be present. Before Kim could respond, Bradley stepped into the hallway. He was wearing the same Christmas sweater I'd seen him wear 2 years earlier. His expression shifted for just a second before he forced a smile onto his face. Walt, he said casually, I didn't know you were coming over. This is just routine paperwork. Nothing you need to concern yourself with. Routine paperwork involving land that belongs to me, I answered evenly. Paperwork naming you as my legal representative on a document whose notarization page doesn't even appear to belong with the rest of it. His smile remained, but it looked far less convincing. I think you're misunderstanding everything, Bradley replied. This is simply estate planning. It's meant to protect family assets. Legal documents can be confusing. Technical wording gets misinterpreted all the time. I looked directly into his eyes. Bradley, I said calmly, I spent 38 years building parking garages and commercial structures. I've read engineering specification, contracts, and legal documents for most of my adult life. Technical language isn't the problem. I paused. What I don't understand is why you told me I was signing paperwork related to a storage unit, yet 3 weeks later my signature somehow appears beneath a general power of attorney making you my attorney-in-fact. Just then the doorbell rang. The notary had arrived. She stepped inside carrying a leather portfolio, glanced around the room, and almost immediately sensed the tension. After listening for less than a minute, she quietly cleared her throat. Perhaps I should come back another day, she suggested politely. Bradley turned toward her almost instantly. No, he said quickly, just wait a minute. Kim looked back and forth between us, her confusion growing. Bradley, she asked slowly, what exactly is Dad talking about? Bradley rubbed his forehead before answering. It's complicated, he muttered. I was planning to explain everything after the holiday. Explain what? Kim asked. He finally sighed. My brokerage has been dealing with serious cash flow problem, he admitted. Nearly $340,000 became tied up after the Fort Mill deal collapsed. I thought if we temporarily changed ownership on your dad's property, we could secure financing until everything was settled. Once things recovered, everything would have been transferred back exactly the way it was. I never raised my voice. Temporary restructuring, I replied quietly. That's a generous description for what my attorney calls forgery and financial exploitation of an elderly adult. The room became completely silent. Bradley searched for another explanation. He argued that the appraisal was outdated. He insisted I probably wasn't going to develop the property anyway. Then he claimed families should help each other when someone falls into financial trouble. I let him finish every word. Only then did I calmly explain that the county had already placed a fraud alert against the property. The power of attorney had officially been revoked. The North Carolina Real Estate Commission had been notified earlier that morning, and Denise Callahan was fully prepared to file a police report that very afternoon if the notary appointment continued for even another minute. For the first time since I arrived, Bradley had absolutely nothing left to say.